Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Colleen Meyer with Meyer and Mintz LLC, bringing you another episode of Fearless in Pink. And I have this wonderful, interesting woman here with us. Her name is Julie Foucht, and her business is the Art of Feminine Business Coach. So she's a feminine business coach, and she's going to explain that to us, what that looks like and who her ideal customer is. And she's a divine feminine guide, which I'm excited about. Julie, welcome to Fearless in Pink, and tell us a little bit about your business.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you, especially since we found out beforehand you're kind of from my old neighborhood where I grew up. Yes. So already there's a connection there.
Mm-hmm.
So my business is really about empowering women to connect into their divine feminine and to build a business that it honors their divine and is led by their soul's longing. I believe we all came here with a purpose. We all came to the planet with a mission. And then the human experience took over. And we got taught to dim our light. We got taught not to believe in the magic that exists within us. We got taught to conform and get along. And this used to drive me crazy. You know, I've got a bunch of kids I raised. I raised 4 kids. And the first thing that they learned to do in school is to line up in a straight line and to walk in conformity. And I know that, you know, it's necessary to control 20 little 5-year-olds that way, but it's just, the conformity used to drive me crazy because our soul doesn't want to conform. Our soul wants to be able to live out its purpose, but that's not what we're taught all the way growing up. And so then we have to go back and unlearn. And that's what I work with on my clients, is helping to unlearn that dimming of their light so that they can truly live their soul's purpose. And it's really important to me, and make a lot of money doing it.
I love that because I think, I did my dissertation on women business owners. And we found in research, it was prior research and then our own research, was that women tend to have a higher fear of failure and tend to, and I can't put everybody in the same box. That's why we have this podcast. We have strong women coming and talking about all the amazing things that they're doing and being a inspiration. But it's not just the higher fear of failure, but it's also a lower sense of self-efficacy as a business person or person going into business than our male counterparts. And I think a lot of that is, like you were talking about, how we were trained and, how society puts barriers on us, and it tells us this is what we have to look like and act like and be like. Don't tell me, do you see that? Do you feel the same way?
And it's in our DNA, right? It comes from the ancestral stuff. It wasn't until 150 years ago that women in this country could have their own money. We couldn't open a bank account without a husband or a spouse, a husband or a father giving us permission. We couldn't own property. We couldn't hire a lawyer to represent us. So in our DNA, we have this thing built in that says, to survive, be nice, be marriageable, don't make waves, right? And then we go further back, and what happened to powerful women? What happened to strong, powerful, magic women? Oh, they got burned at the stake, right? So we carry all of that in our DNA. And when for guys, the risk of failure is they're going to have to start over. For women, the risk of failure is they're going to get burned at the stake. Like, it's life and death here. So it's so much harder. And it's stuff that we're unaware of, right? Most of us don't walk around, but it holds us back. It keeps us from standing up for ourselves. It keeps us from, getting out there and bragging and saying, I'm great at this stuff. it really is. It really is, even with the really powerful women I've met, there's layers of it.
So what's the first step? Is it identifying, is it becoming in tune with yourself, or is it starting to identify some of the barriers that keep us back from being our fullest potential? What are some of the things that, women need to look at when we're trying to become fearless and remove these barriers and be the best that we can from your perspective as a business coach?
So I'm a really different kind of business coach. And I'm a business coach who's also a little bit of a witch. And so for me, the very first step in what I teach my clients is really to go inward and to create a connection with source, universe, God, whatever you want to call it. And from that place, then source everything that comes out. So instead of it coming from, I did my market research and this is what my people want, it comes from, I connected myself to source. I connected myself to that universal thing that's bigger. And this is what came through me and wants to be born out into the world. And when I'm operating from, I think the world wants this, I totally shut down, right? It doesn't work. When I'm operating from, this is what source wants to have birthed into the world through me, then it's much easier to just allow that to be and not have my ego, little child fear take over. So that's like the very first step.
I heard somebody ask a question the other night. We went to a networking dinner and somebody had asked a question about someone had told her to put it, I guess it was some kind of money she needed for something. And he told this woman, some gentleman told this woman, well, you need to put it out there into the universe. You need to believe it. You put it out there and you believe that you're going to receive it. What are your thoughts on that type of advice that he had given her?
I think that it's a beginning. It's a surface level. I think it sets us up for failure because it goes much deeper. I think that like I just taught a class on manifesting. And there's so much more than just put it out in the world. There's also what's going on inside of you. And you can have all of the best strategies. You can put it out in the world. And if you've got a family belief or an ancestral belief in you that women shouldn't outshine the men in their life, whatever you put out there, you're going to put out there a little tentatively, and people are going to respond tentatively, right?
Right.
If you've got a past life where you were a leader and you got everybody killed in your tribe, then every time you try and step into leadership, something in your soul is going to pull back and say, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. People die when you're a leader, right? So those kinds of things can really affect our results. And the idea that just change your thoughts has always driven me crazy, because it's not a matter of changing your thoughts. It's a matter of going inside and healing the stuff that keeps you from moving forward, removing the ancestral blocks, changing the vows and contracts you made in past lives so that you're free to do the work that you're here to do.
Let's talk about, because you said something that made me think that I questioned myself on. I know my husband's a biologist and he's like, he poo-poos it, but I still get curious. I think there's something to, and maybe this is what you're talking about, so correct me if I'm wrong, like DNA memory. Because, I do a lot of genealogy. It's one of my hobbies. And if you go back, 400 or 500 years, you see patterns within families that are like occupational or interest. And this isn't something like, 150 years ago. Well, this person that's living today was not influenced by that person because they were nowhere around. They were dead for, a century. But I find that you see these traits that run through family lines. What is your thoughts and feelings about that?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. And we can even look back. And I'm not a biblical scholar at all,
Mhm.
but there's a line there about the sins of the father,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
That pass on, and it's a spiritual belief that the sins of the father, that's the same thing as the beliefs pass on generation to generation.
Mhm.
There's a thread that runs through all the generations. And there's a Native American saying, and I don't remember what tribe it was, but somebody shared this with me once, that there are behind you 7 generations of grandmothers and mothers and aunties, and 7 generations of grandfathers and uncles and cousins. And all of them are saying, is she the one? Is she the one to finally heal this for our family? So it's something that runs through lots and lots of spiritual beliefs,
Mhm.
that we carry it forward. We carry the wound forward. We carry the sin is a really weird word, because I think we've interpreted it differently than maybe it was meant. But
Mhm.
the wounds of the past and the beliefs of the past get carried forward. And we have 7 generations in front of us who are asking us, please heal that so we don't have to carry that.
I love that because I think that's so powerful, because you can see, I have people that I know that are, mental health specialists, or they do type of, intuitive healing and all of these stuff. But across the spectrum, if it's drugs or if it's alcohol abuse, you see people talking about this generational thing that has to be stopped and has to be healed before, before the next generation, or even physical abuse, right? Or some kind of domestic violence in a family. That's generational until there's that person that comes along. Exactly what you're saying is that it stops here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those
I'm
things.
the one that's going to heal it. I'm going to do the work and I'm going to heal it. And, I coach women in business,
Mhm.
and we're not talking about business here,
Yeah,
but doing this work is what allows you to have the business.
that's right. Because when you heal, when these things are addressed, these are the things that could be holding us back from being a successful business owner. And that's the stuff that you help them tune into so they can release it and then become the better business person. Correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What made you decide that you wanted to get into business, this type of business, and coach people?
Well, first of all, I've always been a business owner.
Mhm.
My first business was when I was 12 years old.
Mhm.
And if you go back to the little tiny town I grew up in, uh, you still see evidence of that business. So, and that was a long time ago. When I started my coaching practice, I didn't know what coaching was. I'd never heard
Mhm.
of it. And I'd gone through a really, really messy divorce from an abusive ex. And I said, I want to empower women. I don't want another woman to have to be in the situation I was and stay because they didn't think they could make enough money to support themselves and their
Mhm.
kids, which is why I stayed. And so I was looking for what I could do to do that. And I discovered the world of coaching, did my coach training, um, and really worked my business really from a masculine push, grind, work a lot of hours in the beginning, and sort of said to me, can't do this anymore. And when I didn't listen, they sent a big truck to run into the back of my little Honda car and caused me to slow down, lay on ice, and listen. And the feminine business and the feminine started to really talk to me and whisper to me. And the art of feminine business is really just keeps expanding and giving me more information and unveiling more and more over the past 6, 7, 8 years, however long that's been part of my brand. And taken my business in this direction of, we've got to do the healing work. We've got to do the internal work. And then we don't do action then we begin to build the business from the spiritual plane. We send the invitations out on a spiritual plane, and then we go take the aligned action to make it happen here in the physical, to pull towards us what we've already created.
When you go back, let's go back to so you were forced to slow down, and if you could go back to that time, is there anything you would have done differently, or did you feel that in that lighting up and being in tune, it was put out there the way it was supposed to be, or would you have done anything a little bit differently?
Well, I think that I would really like to have listened before I had to have had the injury to my back. On the other hand, that injury still acts as a reminder, so it'll flare up if I'm not paying attention. Maybe that was part of my experience that I needed to have. It's also an injury that is reflective of a past life that I lived. So it was also a doorway into understanding a different part of my soul's journey, not my human journey, but my soul's journey that influences my human journey this time around. So, I'd always liked to not have that injury, but it is part of the path that I took to get here. So perhaps it was necessary. Interesting question, though.
If you let's talk about your coaching business. So if I was a woman and I'm listening to the podcast, who would be someone, what characteristics would someone have, or like your ideal customer? I mean, I'm sure all women can totally get something out of this, but who would you think that's like your most traits that people come to you?
Well, I really ask that the clients who come to me, first of all, be willing to do what they've never done before. I ask them to be willing to be out of their comfort zone. I ask them to try things on. I like to help women to create prosperity. And, we use a business model as one of the channels to bring in that prosperity. So I ask them to do things in their business that maybe they're uncomfortable with. I ask them to get on podcasts, I ask them to be visible on social media. And so you have to be willing to do those things. And part of manifesting is being willing to do whatever it takes, not knowing what it will take. And so that's one of the characteristics that I look for in my women is, are they willing? Are they open to new ideas? Are you open to exploring? I mean, the stuff that I talk about today, if I had heard somebody talk about it 20 years ago, I would have been totally eye rolling. And so there has to be that openness that even if you're rolling your eyes at me, you're willing to explore it.
Yeah. So, I think that people are, we're spiritual beings, and I agree with that. We have to open our minds up to, what's causing the blockage. What can open it up? What is happening in here that needs to come forth. and manifest itself, whether it's, because then we're going to get rid of that fear. We're going to get rid of that low self-efficacy. We're going to get rid of those blocks. We're going to open up this opportunity for women to be who they are. And that's why we have this podcast. So women can be fearless. It's funny because you said something about when you were out there and you're trying to support your kids and you're a single mom, and that's my space that I was in years ago. And you became male-ish. I don't believe that females should be male-ish, and that's what the pink represents, that we can be strong in who we are as females. And it's obviously you feel the same way because your business is feminine business coach and feminine guide.
Yeah, absolutely. When we entered the workplace, we didn't have any other models. We only had men. And you look at the clothing of the 1980s, big shoulders, narrow waists. We were emulating men, and we were trying to work the way men do. And women are much more powerful when we come from our feminine. And I talk about feminine business, and people will say, is that soft and squishy? Well, sometimes, but you know what? It can also be mama bear fierce.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the heart of a deer and the fierceness of a mama bear, and you stand in the fire like the goddess Kali. And if I've pronounced her name right, apologize if I haven't. Like, it's all of that. It's that fierceness. If you've ever given birth, that is the most powerful thing. And there's no wimpiness in pushing a baby out. For me, when I was pushing my babies out, it was like there was no room for fear. There was work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And you do the work, and there's pain to be managed, and all of that. And business is the same way. Your soul has something you want to birth into the world, and there's no room there for fear. And that's the fierceness of the feminine that is just as powerful as the strength of the masculine.
I love that. I absolutely agree with that. And I love that. And I like that analogy that you said, when we're giving birth, there is no fear because there's a job to be done. And I'm going to steal that. Can I steal that? That's amazing.
That's yours.
Because it's so true. Now, let's say somebody out there wanted to get a hold of you and said, that sounds like something that I would want to participate in. I need her. How can they get a hold of you? What would be the best way?
So there's a couple of ways. They can get in touch with us on my website, which is juliefoucht.com. And Fouch has a weird T at the end of it. I also have a Facebook group. And so you can look up Feminine Business Magic and find our Facebook group. I'm sure you'll put the links in the show notes. And this fall, I don't know when this is going to air, but this fall, I am starting a new Sister Mind. It'll be a year-long journey to be doing this work with women, activating their prosperity and their feminine creativity and doing all of this work. And so if you're interested in that, you can send an email to my email, and we'll get you the information and see if you're a fit for that.
I love that journey that's going to be coming up, because I think that when you said it's a year-long journey, I think that's perfect for a lot of women, because it's a journey. It's something you're going to go through. You're going to have a start point. You're going to go through it and you're going to learn. And that sounds very interesting. I might look into that myself.
We can talk about that. It's really powerful stuff. And when we work in the feminine, we need the spaciousness of the year. We need time to go deep and wide, because that's what the feminine is the feminine goes deep and wide. And when we do that, it opens space for more prosperity, more money, more rich experiences, and more love to come into our life. And really the juiciness of the work that I do.
And I love it. It sounds amazing. And I'm so happy that you came on, Julie. Thank you so much, you guys. This is Julie Foucht, and we will get her information out there with when we go live on YouTube and the podcast. So we'll make sure everybody has your link. So thank you so much for coming on, everyone. The Art of Feminine Business Coach and the Divine Feminine Guide. You guys, you got to get a hold of Julie. She's going to change your life. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.